So there's a max force DT 910, whatever you want to call it. That one's actually a 9. And so the customer, because they're getting ready, this truck's going to leave service, they want to get rid of it. And so they want to do like something cheap. And we knew there was coolant in the oil. So you know, one of the liners, O-ring's gone bad. It got hot. The coolant's dripping down the outside of the liner into the oil. This is the top, that's the bottom. So they'd actually be turned around in the truck. They'd be like that. There's a O-ring right there that keeps the coolant inside the liner, right? So there's coolant all the way around this liner as the piston goes up and down, and that's the O-ring that seals it. So we thought for sure when we were going to take it apart that we were going to find that when we took it apart, we're going to find a bad O-ring, because we knew it was number 4. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. See how you numbered them there, but anyways, the numbers spin around. There's a crack in this liner. We haven't seen this hardly ever. There's a crack in this liner from here to here. And so coolant was going, see how this one's rusty inside? Coolant was going inside the liner and dripping down into the piston, or dripping down into the crankcase. Yeah, usually what happens is, here's a better one, maybe a better picture right there. That O-ring will crack, and when it does, all that coolant will drop down in, you know, imagine it flipped over, will go down into the crankcase. And so once you see that, then you know you have to do like an end frame. So the end frame comes with 6 liners. It comes with, you use the same connecting rods. The pistons are down there. So it comes with 6 pistons, 6 wrist pins. It comes with all the bearings, you know, rod bearings, main bearings. And so it's usually a simple fix. So he wanted to do it on the cheap, and he's like, hey, I just want to put a couple, put the liners in it, put the pistons in it. The bearings look good, run the bearings, surface the cylinder head. So, okay. I don't think that's the right way, because we're always going to service the cylinder head, right? Always service the cylinder head. Take it, everything, new injector cups in it, cones, whatever someone calls them, those, valve job, everything, right? Pressure test, make sure the thing's perfect. So when we took the cylinder head off, we noticed in the number 4 cylinder, it had sucked an exhaust valve, like the seat had sucked up inside. So we sent it out figuring, okay, we'll let's put all new seats in it. If it needs new valves, they can't be ground put, right? So just a complete cylinder head. So we don't really look at it because it's rusty and it's ugly. They don't even charge us at the cylinder head shop to inspect it, because they're like, this cylinder head's cracked in 4 out of the 5 cylinders. Like once they cleaned it, got all the crap off it, they didn't have to pressure test. They just looked and it was cracked. So now we got to try to find out, we have a cylinder head for it, but they don't want to spend that kind of money on it. So they kind of want to go with maybe an aftermarket cylinder head, which I don't want to do, right? We just want to buy one from International and put it on there. So yeah, I mean, it's just sitting right now, just trying to figure out, what we need to do. We checked the turbo. Turbo's marginal. They want to run it again. So, okay. And, EGR cooler, you can see some rust and other stuff in it. But this truck is leaving their fleet like in 6 months, and so they don't want to spend all this money, because with it not running, it has no value. You know what I mean? So we got to make it run. And they were just hoping that it would be, a couple cylinder liners, and put 6 cylinder liners in and put 6 pistons in it, service the cylinder head, put it back together. That's not going to be the case. Yeah, it's covered in rust, but you can see the crack inside. Starts right there. I don't remember ever seeing one of those cylinder liners be cracked. Not that big, not from top to bottom. And then we checked the oil squirters that are under there, and they're there. It's not like it's missing. Sometimes the oil squirters are squirt on the bottom side of the liner, like if the liner goes like that in the truck. And then on the block, there's a squirter that squirts oil that hits the liner, to lube the piston, and then the piston wipes the oil back down. And so sometimes when you see something like that, you'll see like either one of the squirters has been knocked off, because it just looks like a little, I don't know where they're at right now. But you usually take them off to take the liners out. So that's when you inspect them, right? Because pushing the liners out, you can break one of those oil squirters and then have all kinds of problems. So anyways, it's still cheaper this way by a little bit. I mean, we'll do a long block. I would love to do a long block. It's more expensive for the customer because the long block's so expensive, right? And so when we contemplate doing that, I'd rather do it because it's less labor. I mean, to take the motor apart and you leave it in the truck, so that means all the main bearings have to go in the truck. The crankshaft doesn't come out, you know what I mean? And to put the thrust bearing in the backside, it's tough. You have to get the crank in the perfect position to get the thrust bearing into the crankshaft in the back. It's just labor intensive, you know what I mean? Versus we just pull the block out, just get another long block, put a long block in it, and then we're done. We don't have to worry about the cylinder head, but it is still cheaper. We priced it out both ways, and if you do an in-frame, even servicing the cylinder head, it's still cheaper, you know what I mean? Because I think the labor's a little bit cheaper. It's basically the parts, because I think depending on the engine kits, and you know how prices have changed so bad lately, like you never know, like from month to month, things keep going up. Let's say like the in-frame kit, let's just use an easy number, $6 grand. Service the cylinder head, get it rebuilt, $2 grand. So, plus miscellaneous, whatever. If you get the long block I think is 15 or 16,000. So parts wise, you know what I mean? I'd rather do the long block because it's just less things to go wrong, because when you pull these liners out, you got to check the deck, because this cylinder, this liner, I don't know if you can see that lip right there, that seals that liner to the block. If you end up with porosity, a lot of times like if people just run water in them and not enough coolant, the deck of the block will have porosity in it. So this cylinder, it won't seal, or the liner sinks down, and it'll run for 4 to 6 months at least. And then you'll start to have some issues with it because the liner isn't sticking up far enough to meet the head gasket where it needs to go, because the head gasket will go right here. Don't ask me the number, it's in a book, but you know what I mean? So it's like cylinder protrusion. So thank God when we checked that block, we didn't have any issues. So the lip that this rides in the block, there was no porosity. Because if you do that, then we actually have a company that will bring out, I don't remember the name of them, they'll basically bore that down and then shim it back up. They actually have a tool that will go inside the block, cut the groove deeper, then shim it, then we put these liners back in to get this liner to set, I don't know how many thousandths above the deck height of the block. So when you put the head gasket on and you crush the head gasket, you have a positive seal, not only between here and the block, so you keep the coolant, this O-ring keeps the coolant from going down in the crankcase. This lip right here, it's just metal on metal, that gets pressed down so hard that it seals here so no coolant can go that way. So the good thing is this block doesn't have any porosity in it, so the new liners will seal in it. But if they don't, that's, thousands of dollars to fix that too. No, but like on a commercial engine, especially with the international motors, because they have an in-frame kit, that's the way we've done it for 1,000 years. So the guy that runs this fleet, he's older too. That's the way we always did it. Just cheaper. You could get an in-frame kit. I think when we first started doing it, I think the in-frame kit cost me $2,500. I think they cost like $6 grand. I don't see that it comes with a lot more stuff. You know what I mean? It comes with the oil filter, fuel filter. A lot of them came with new intake manifolds because there was so much carbon inside those that you couldn't get it off. So some of the kits come with an intake manifold that it has a coating inside of it, because that intake pressure sensor and temperature sensor right there will get a bunch of coking or sooted over, and then they get plugged. And the cool thing is, your truck can run really bad, and one of those can be bad, and it throws no code. No code. It's a cool thing. It's great. Yeah, it doesn't. The computer doesn't see the intake temperature, and it doesn't see the intake pressure, right? Or if it's lying to it, but it never throws a code. So typically when we do these, I always want to replace those sensors. And somebody's like, "Well, how do you know they're bad?" I'm like, "I don't." But let's just put them in there anyways, right? Because you can. We had so many trucks, and we found that out in our shop. Experience. Yes, it was just experience. It's like, if you're chasing something, it's like you tell people all the time that you have this computer-controlled thing, right? And the computer's making all the decisions based on information it's getting from these sensors. Well, we need a code or something, right? So we kind of know what system to go look at. Like, do we have a fuel issue? Do we have a coolant issue? Do we have an EGR issue? You know, and with the exhaust systems down, do we have a def issue? What's causing it to run bad? You've got no codes, and the thing runs like a dog. High pressure oil's good, you know what I mean? Fuel pressure's good. You know, running relative compression's good. You know, everything seems to be good. The exhaust isn't plugged. You have no exhaust codes, and it's just running just a little bit crappy. You take those sensors out and you see that, like the one, you know how they look, like a temperature sensor just looks like this, right? It's just like a point like that, and it's got a bunch of carbon on it. But the pressure sensor is the one, it's just got a little hole in it, measures pressure. Well, once you fill the hole with carbon, it's pretty hard for it to read in pressure, and throws no code. No code. They made an intake manifold that had a coating in it that stuff wouldn't stick to. Because when you'd look at it, you'd have to like glass bead it off if you wanted to get it off. So some of the kits come with that, and so no, not even. Like this one, the one that's cracked, it's this one that's cracked. No, I don't know why it cracked. I mean, I guess somebody might want to know that, but here's the thing, I don't, you know what I mean? I guess I could try to research it and find out, and I'm sure original liners came out of the truck. The truck's never had an in-frame. I mean, the truck's probably, Beans are getting rid of it, it's probably a 2012, because it's a federal vehicle. I don't think, they don't follow the same laws, the same carb compliance that we have to here, you know, in California. Like now, we better have a 2012 or newer, because it has to have DEF fluid and it has to have an SCR. We see some of their trucks, I'm like, how do you guys get it? Because it's a federal vehicle, so they can run them all. Because they look at it, they look at a certain number, and when it gets to a certain age and a certain mileage, they get rid of them. I don't know that that's always true, because I remember there was some crew haulers that we worked on, and I was told every year when we do the annual inspection and the repairs that, hey, this thing's going away next year. Yeah, so we're just waiting to get an approval and see which way they want to go, right? I will put an in-frame in it, right? Which will be pistons, liners, whatever. We're going to have to buy a cylinder head. I hope they're going to go with OE. I hope we're not going aftermarket, because I don't want to deal with those problems. Because let's say if it does have a problem, it's still my problem, right? I have nowhere to go back to and go, hey, your cylinder head failed. Okay, here's another cylinder head. No. Who's going to pay us to take it apart? That's always the worst thing about getting bad parts from certain people, right? Like, they're like, oh no, we'll get you another part. Yeah, well, who's gonna, you know, if it's a radiator cap, fine, I'll eat the labor on the radiator cap, right? But if it's buried, you know, right, it takes a while to get those cylinder heads off. Even to get that cylinder head off, I mean, you gotta pull the hood, you gotta pull the core support, you know, and then if it has an interstage cooler over the top of the valve cover, you gotta take that off, you gotta take the turbos off, gotta take the exhaust manifolds off, gotta take, you know, there's just a bunch of stuff you gotta take apart. So there's no porosity, so we're okay. There's porosity on the outside, but I don't care about that. I just care about this sealing surface right where my thumbnail is. So that liner is going to sit in there, and it's going to seal right where my thumbnail is, and so there's no porosity, so we'll have the right protrusion on the liner. The liner will stick up far enough above the deck height of this block. So anyway, somebody just spent hours cleaning this, so I want to make sure, I just want to make sure it doesn't rust, because you know we get so much rain in California.